What if the price for curing all diseases was to offer a living human every year? In 2294, that contract was signed, but now, someone wants to break it. Earth became a garden without thorns, cancer, Alzheimer's, genetic mutations, pandemics, all erased. Hospitals were shut down. Funeral homes became obsolete. Death became optional. And it all began with them, the Veltrax. An alien race that emerged from the void with a gift so vast it felt divine. Medical technology capable of rewriting human DNA, erasing pain, and extending life for centuries. Faced with extinction, humanity accepted, but hidden within the fine print of their benevolence was a clause. Poetic, cryptic, inescapable. With each solar cycle complete, one human shall be offered. Alive and conscious. At first, Earth resisted. Protests rose. Debates ignited. But as parents were healed, as dying children began to laugh again, silence fell. Now the contract of Eris is law, unspoken, unquestioned, absolute, and in orbit. Above the Earth, the Eris station stands, a monument of glass and metal, where the sacrifices are made. Loran Myles was never meant to question it, agent of the Interplanetary Intelligence Division, a skeptic by nature, emotionally distant, and haunted by the loss of his wife, the first offering under the contract. But something's wrong. During a routine inspection of Eris, the latest body has vanished. No trace, no data, no explanation, only silence. And for the first time in years, Loran feels it. Doubt. The halls of Eris Station echoed with an unnatural, quiet, a stillness that didn't belong to metal or machinery, but to something deeper. Something watching. Loran walked the central corridor, past surgical chambers long converted into ceremonial halls. Clean, immaculate. But behind the sterile beauty, there was always the same smell. Fear. The last offering, a woman named Adrian Vale, had vanished during transfer. No footage, no bio readings, only a silent chamber. And a faint trace of ozone in the air. The Veltrax, as usual, gave no explanation. They stood still, towering beings of obsidian skin and golden eyes, their presence like living monoliths, unflinching, unanswering. "They are not the ones in control," whispered Dr. Mara Kane, a former biologist now turned archivist aboard Eris. "There's something behind them, something older." She spoke of the Olemari, entities never seen, only referenced in Veltrax glyphs. Gods? Specters? Parasites? No one knew. But what chilled Loran the most was discovering a name, his wife's, embedded in one of the glyphs, encrypted in a forgotten log. How could it be there, if the Veltrax had never met her before the first offering? Something was lying, and lies, when hidden behind technology advanced enough to seem like magic, are harder to uncover and deadlier to expose. As the stars shifted beyond Eris Station's glass panels, Loran felt a truth gnawing at his mind. Yo saw, contract was not made with aliens, it was made with something far beyond comprehension, something that feeds, not on death, but on the essence of being alive. Loran's quarters aboard Eris Station were small, functional, a box of metal and silence. But silence, lately, had started to speak. Every night the same whisper, a breath that wasn't his, calling. A name only he should know, Alara, his wife's name. He checked the comm logs, clean, surveillance feeds, scrubbed. Every system insisted nothing had entered his room. But there it was, a voice that bled through dimensions. Not a recording, not a memory, something alive. He confronted Mira again, but she only looked deeper into her archive crystals. The glyphs change, Loran. They're adapting. They update themselves after each offering. That shouldn't be possible. Unless the glyphs weren't records. They were a living language, a conversation. And now, the name Alara was appearing not only in logs, but whispered through the very walls of the station. And not just hers. Names of others, previously offered. Now, echoing in digital pulses, encoded in lights, flickering in untraceable intervals. They weren't being erased, they were being stored. But why? Was this resurrection or replication? Loran's instincts, sharpened by years of intelligence work, screamed one thing. This wasn't just a ritual. It was a process, a harvest of identity, of consciousness, for a purpose far beyond medicine. And Eris was just the surface. A beautiful, sterile altar, built on top of a god that didn't want prayers, only fragments. Eris Station had layers, physical, procedural, and forbidden. Officially, there were 14 decks, but Loran's clearance allowed him to see the ghost blueprints. There were 17 decks. 15 to 17 had no access protocols, no assigned personnel. Just a locked data tag, Sanctum. He bypassed the firewalls. Eris resisted. Not like a system protecting secrets, more like a nervous system flinching from a scalpel. What he found wasn't a deck, it was a vault. Hundreds of pods, sleek, humming, glowing faintly from within. Each bore a name, a heartbeat. They weren't corpses, they weren't conscious, they were held. Suspended between awareness and oblivion. And then he saw her, Alara. Not a file, not a simulation. His wife, preserved. Frozen mid-expression, eyes shut, skin unaging. He stepped closer. Her vitals spiked, not random, responsive. Something inside. The pod knew him, remembered, and worse, something inside the pod wasn't her. In the corner of the vault, ancient symbols glowed along the walls. Veltrax glyphs. And another set, older, more fluid, almost alive. The Olemari. These weren't preservation chambers, they were incubators, and Alara, like the others, wasn't being stored. She was being rewritten. Loran sat motionless inside the sanctum, the silence around him almost sacred. But his thoughts screamed. If Alara was alive, if she was still in there, what was keeping her trapped? He activated his neuroscanner, running a deep sync scan across her pod. The results weren't just strange, they were impossible. Her neural patterns weren't decaying, they were duplicating, layer upon layer of cognitive structures, not deteriorating with time, but folding in on themselves like a recursive spiral. Every memory, every feeling, every part of her was still there, but overlaid with something else, something alien. It wasn't possession, it was overlay. Two consciousnesses trying to inhabit the same vessel, not in conflict, but in synthesis. And the process wasn't complete. Suddenly the glyphs around the chamber pulsed. Not just light, soundless echoes vibrating inside his chest. He wasn't alone. From the shadows emerged a figure, humanoid, translucent skin veined with starlight, eyes like twin galaxies collapsing, an emissary of the Olemari. You seek. To reclaim what was freely given, it spoke, not in voice, but in thought. But the offering remembers. She resists, and that pain feeds the bridge. Loran tried to reach for his sidearm, but his body froze. They were never meant to survive, the being continued. They were meant to become. Become what? No. Answer came. Only the echo of his own heartbeat, now perfectly in sync. With Alara's, he had crossed a threshold, and something ancient now watched him from within her. The atmosphere aboard Eris had changed. It wasn't just silence anymore. It was anticipation, a pressure building in the bones, in the breath. Loran felt it every time he stepped into a corridor, the walls listening, the air watching. He reviewed the security feeds again. Feed, Eero 7, offline. Feed, Eero 8, glitching. Feed, Eero 9, static. Then a whisper, not a malfunction. A voice. It repeated in bursts of interference, laced into the frequency like a forgotten prayer. The seed remembers. The wound must remain open. He enhanced the audio. The voice was neither male nor female. It was as if space itself had developed vocal cords. He isolated its origin, a sub-level beneath the main ritual chamber, long sealed, never logged in any blueprint. Unauthorized construction? No. This place wasn't built. It was grown. Descending. Into the hidden passage, Loran's skin prickled. Glyphs, older than Veltrax language, coated the walls in slow pulses of violet and gold. They weren't just symbols, they were warnings. At the core, he found a sphere, levitating, humming with memories not his own. As he reached out, visions assaulted him, a planet consumed by light, a child offered in silence, a city erased by a scream that shattered no air, only time. And then, he saw them, the Olemari. Not gods, not demons, but echoes of a civilization that had transcended physical form. Entities that no longer fed on resources or energy. They fed on meaning, on pain, wrapped in devotion. And through the contract, humanity had become sustenance. They had hidden it well. Loran accessed restricted archives buried under 6 layers of encryption, each sealed by different agencies. Not even Earth's Central Intelligence had full clearance. But Eris did. And Eris obeyed him now. The file was labeled only as 01, Initiation. Footage flickered to life. The year 2213, a cold, sterile chamber. A man strapped to a levitating cradle, eyes wide, not with fear but resignation. He whispered a name, a woman's name. Maris. Loran froze. His wife. She was there, not as a victim, but as a witness. She stood beside the Veltrax envoy, unreadable, calm. And then she turned toward the camera and spoke words that shattered Loran's mind. The first offering must be willing, or the cycle fails. The man screamed as violet tendrils of light consumed him, bending around him like vines of fire and sorrow. His body dissolved into waves of data, not death, but translation. Into what? He wasn't sure. But Maris had known. She had chosen. And if she had chosen, then nothing about her death had been an accident. Eris had never been truly empty. Loran once believed the orbital station functioned solely as a ritual site. Clean halls, regulated oxygen, precise gravity. Control. Everything about it screamed neutrality, cold efficiency. But now, he could feel them. Eyes. Not human. Not Veltrax. Something else. The corridors seemed to stretch longer. Shadows moved a breath before he did. Monitors flickered with static in rhythmic pulses, as if breathing. Then, a name appeared on every screen at once. Olemari. It wasn't a word. It was a presence. An echo that coiled into the base of his spine. The Veltrax had spoken of the Olemari only once, as those who watch. Beings they revered yet never claimed to understand. And now, Loran was in their domain. Inside one of the sealed wings of Eris, he found the Chamber of Translations. It was a cathedral, curved walls lined with organic metal, pulsing glyphs etched into living architecture. And in the center, 11 floating obelisks, each bearing a human name and one Veltrax rune. Each one, an offering. But not dead, suspended, there. Minds. Preserved. Then came a whisper, not heard, felt. They are the bridge, and the 12th must awaken us. Loran staggered back. 12 offerings, not sacrifices, keystones. He wasn't just uncovering a crime, he was unlocking a door. One that perhaps should have remained shut. The truth had to be sent. Loran knew that returning to Terra might be impossible, but the people had to know what the contract truly concealed. He entered the old comms chamber, a forgotten room behind Eris's maintenance. Core, lined with analog consoles. Off the network. Untraceable. His fingers danced over the dusty interface, bypassing Veltrax encryptions, rerouting through decommissioned satellites. One last signal, one final transmission. As he began to record, a low hum vibrated through the walls. Not mechanical, organic. The lights dimmed, the temperature dropped. The station was waking up, or worse, reacting. This is Agent Loran Myles. If you're hearing this, I'm likely already gone. He detailed everything, the hidden chamber, the 11 suspended minds, the glyphs that pulsed like hearts, and the 12th key they seemed to await. The role of the Olemari not as gods, but as parasites of consciousness, thriving on the fear and endurance of sentient minds, trapped between death and memory. We didn't receive a cure. We were drafted into a machine, one that feeds on hope, on pain. The console sparked. Static clawed at the signal. Then, a voice interrupted. But it wasn't from the station. It was inside the broadcast. Let them forget Loran, or become the 12th. He froze. The transmission was corrupted, hijacked. As if the message itself had been absorbed, digested, and now replied to. A choice remained. Send it anyway, risking mass panic and planetary retaliation, or destroy the only evidence. Outside the comms bay, the corridor lights flickered in unison. Not malfunctioning, summoning. Time was no longer his ally. He hit send, then ran toward the core, toward the truth, or toward his end. There was no more running. Loran reached the central nexus of Eris, a chamber of impossible architecture. Shifting walls that pulsed like lungs, veins of light snaking upward toward a gravity-defiant altar, hovering above it, an orb of writhing energy. Not Veltrax. Not human, alive, a prison, and a doorway. It recognized him. Visions surged through Loran's mind. The first offering, his wife, suspended in eternal cognition, screaming silently across timeless space. 11 minds bound like neural filaments, powering the interspecies contract. And the missing piece was him, the 12th key. Not a tool, a will. Not to complete the ritual, but to rewrite it. The Olemari stirred, not in form, but in presence. The station began to fracture, pulled between collapsing realities. All paths converged on Loran. He had one moment, one choice: break the cycle and free the minds, risking the collapse of the bioresonant lattice that sustained millions of cured lives on Terra, or accept the role, become the 12th, and preserve the illusion of peace. You chose her, the voice whispered again. Now choose all of them. He closed his eyes and stepped into the light. The orb consumed him, not with fire, but with memory. His essence dissolved, not erased, but transformed. He became not a sacrifice, but a signal. Across the stars, those who had forgotten began to remember. The cure faltered, but awareness bloomed. A new voice emerged from Eris. Contract broken. System rebooting. The Veltrax vanished without warning. The Olemari silenced, and from the wreckage of a collapsed ritual, something unknown awakened. Not salvation, not vengeance, but the first whisper of choice.